right, welcome to another episode of Reptile Fight Club. I'm Justin Julander, in case you were wondering, and here with me, of course, is Rob Stone, my trusty co-host. How you doing, Rob?
I'm doing great.
Nice. And today we're joined by a special guest, David Kelley. Thanks for coming on, David, and welcome to the podcast.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. So, I guess it's been I guess you guys might not have sensed any huge gaps because we've kind of had a few coming out here and there, every other week or so. And so, but it's been maybe a couple weeks for us and maybe a needed break. We had a lot of stuff going on, but back at it now. Happy to have a fun topic tonight for a little bit of a discussion. And thanks for coming on. And maybe tell us a little bit about yourself, where you fit into herpetoculture.
Yeah, no problem. I've been working with mostly Australian pythons. That's where I got my start. Of course, I was a little obnoxious, know-it-all back in the day, and tried to scale it back, and been certainly humbled by all the different species I've worked with to this point. Nowadays, I primarily work with aquatic salamanders.
Okay.
Diamond pythons are what I really focus on.
Mm-hmm.
We've got a couple colubrids, green rat snakes, some transpecos.
Yeah.
Let's see, I've got Egyptian tortoises, pancake tortoises, marginated Russians. I've got some U.S. Fish and Wildlife permitted deserts.
Nice.
So a little bit of everything, but those are my main focuses these days.
That's cool. I really like the Egyptians and the pancakes. Those are really, I mean, the others are cool too, but those are ones that have really stood out to me. I thought, someday I'll maybe dive into tortoises a little more. I really am a tortoise fan for sure. Yeah. Desert tortoise was one of my first pets. So.
Oh, they're fantastic.
Yeah.
It's something that, my girlfriend, she likes all the animals, but the tortoises get her involved, and it's really nice to be able to work on them together. So, we've got a big crop of dandelion in our front yard, so we just set out some lawn chairs and put the desert tortoises out there to munch, and we just kind of sit and watch them. It's a good time.
Oh yeah, they're fun species. I still enjoy going out and seeing them in the wild. I had that one for quite a while. It was actually my friend found it in a ditch and thought it was a snapping turtle. So he called me the local reptile kid, and I went over and I'm like, that's a desert tortoise. Go for a Sagassisi, and like, can I have it? He's like, yeah, sure. I guess you can have it. So we built a pen out in the backyard, and it was a lot of fun. And he'd get loose every once in a while. I'd have to go put up posters or go looking for him. And he was actually somebody's pet that had him for decades, and had the whole hole in his shell and chain on the, shell type thing, which was kind of frustrating. So that was our first thing to fill that in. And, but cool species.
Yeah, it was a weird situation too. A woman had called my place of work saying, "Hey, I've got 5 tortoises. Can you guys help me out?" And of course, we're going down the spiel of, well, we can't take sulcatos. And she's like, "Oh, no. These are desert tortoises. They're from Nevada, and I brought them here 20 years ago, and they were my husband's, but he's dead now. So what do I do with them?"
Yeah.
So they worked with me, and it was nice. Fish and Wildlife worked with me, and we got them placed. What was crazy, we unfortunately lost the biggest male that they had estimated to be over 100. Wow. What was crazy about it was when we did the necropsy, like it was heart failure. It was like age-related heart. Yeah, it was. Yeah. It shouldn't be that exciting, but to know that tortoise lived a full life and had age-related heart failure is astonishing to me that I saw that in my lifetime. Yeah. Maybe it's not that interesting, but I thought it was fascinating.
Nice, that's cool. Where are you located?
I'm in Wichita, Kansas. Nowadays.
Okay, cool. Yep. Yeah, my sister lived out there for a bit, and I remember going out there. We went to the Omaha Zoo. That's such a cool zoo. Is that pretty close to you, or the?
It's about 6 hours. That's about 6-7 hours north of us.
Really?
Yeah.
Maybe she didn't live in Wichita. I thought
that's Nebraska.
Yeah. Oh
Yeah.
my goodness. Okay. Yeah, she must have been somewhere else, or she was there. They were in the military, so she was all over the place.
Oh,
But
okay. Okay.
so maybe she was in Omaha or close to there. Anyway, oops. Yeah, not a close zoo to you, but
Oh, no worries. No worries.
not sure why I had that in my head. Okay, cool. So yeah, we've heard a lot about Kansas herping and how amazing that can be. And I don't know, do you have much experience with that? Do you go out herping much?
Yeah.
Mm.
During 2020, when everything kind of locked down and I got pretty bored, I've been exposed to it a little bit beforehand, but
Yeah.
I wasn't, I wouldn't say a diehard herper. But I don't know, when you have nothing else to do and everything's closed, I just started driving, and I've been kind of going hard at it for, well, going on 5 years now. So
Yeah.
not a lot. I'm not going to pretend to be the most knowledgeable person compared to
Hmm.
some others out there, but
Sure.
I try to spend at least 3 to 5 nights a week during the spring and summer and fall out road cruising.
Wow. Yeah.
That's what I like anyway.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
so
Yeah. We've always heard these, rumors or not rumors or stories of, flipping a board and finding 20 snakes under it or something, or a rock, there's a couple snakes under each rock. I mean,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
hit it the right time of year, I guess.
I haven't had that experience yet, but that's mostly just my location. I
Mhm.
know further up north in the Flint Hills, like it can be phenomenal.
Okay.
Um, we've been so incredibly dry the past couple of
Mhm.
years. Like we get snakes, but I'm not going to pretend that it's like these massive numbers.
Sure.
Like I've seen 2 milk snakes in the past 2 years, and
Okay.
some of my friends that have been doing it much longer than me have talked about flipping hillsides, and it's like milk snake, milk snake, milk snake, milk
Yeah.
snake. And, same hillsides they've been hitting for 7, 8 years, and
Yeah.
now it's just steadily drying out. And you
Mhm.
know, the saying here now is that we're the Yukon in the winter and the Mojave in the summer, and that's sort of what
Mhm.
it's turning out to be. So
That's
yeah,
unfortunate. Yeah. Yeah. I guess we kind of had a bit of a drought here for quite a while, and then finally we got good water year, and we had some really great herping. Rob and the guys made it out, and we did some really some good herping and saw a lot of stuff. But the stuff that likes the dry and the hot, we didn't find many of those, and then went back the next year and got those. So it's. I guess you take some and you leave some depending on the weather, but yeah, it's
Right. Yeah.
crazy.
I was going to ask you, so in your experience, mostly what you're doing is cruising? It's kind of like, is it in your area, is it kind of flipping, hiking, cruising, all of the above?
I mean, you can flip, you can hike, you can cruise. I just have a physical job, so I want to de-stress. I could flip a rock and bend over a bunch of times, or I could put on a podcast and go drive. I like to drive from like 9 p.m. to 4 or 5 a.m. in the morning,
Oh,
and
wow. So
just
pretty
go.
late.
I
Yeah.
those are the weekends. During the weeknights, I'll try to do like probably get out there at 7, right at dusk, and then cruise until 1, 2 in the morning.
Okay.
During the spring, the hardest part is trying to match my work schedule to good flipping weather. So like
Right.
we'll get great rains, great temps, and then by the time I can get out flipping in the morning, it's 95 degrees and it hasn't rained in 2 weeks. So
Yeah,
that's been the biggest hurdle for that. So I get to enjoy
right.
road cruising a whole lot more. And just to add a little credibility, I think the Kansas is up to 99 herp species, and I've seen about 56. So not all
Okay.
of them, but at least a
Very
good
nice.
majority.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's doing great. And you're doing what our buddy Nipper always encourages, which is to heavily, explore your own state, your local area, and kind of
Mhm.
starting from that standpoint. I know he's given, particularly me, but Justin as well, the business around kind of gallivanting about instead of really focusing down, on our stuff.
Yeah. I think for us too, it was kind of COVID that kicked us in the butt and said, why are you trying to travel to Australia so much when you got some really cool herps in your backyard, and not that we stopped going
Yeah.
to Australia except during the pandemic, but yeah.
Sure.
So,
Well, I think my day job, I'm a zookeeper, and obviously I'm not gonna talk about where I work just because I'm not a spokesperson from them.
Sure.
But I work with a good number of native herps, and it kind of started to blow my mind, like what we have in the United States and what I've not been focusing on for my entire interest in reptiles. So, especially rattlesnakes, and then when I moved to a state with plentiful rattlesnakes, that was sort of what really kicked me. I was like, oh my god, I can just find these.
Right.
Like in Ohio, we had eastern Massasaugas. You can find them, but you're busting to find a Massasauga. Here, like, you just flip a rock and like 18 just come out of the grass. I mean, like it's and you can really kind of see all that variation, and I don't know, it's a good time.
Yeah.
So fun. Those that you're seeing for the most part, is that cane breaks or is that Western Massasaugas or?
So we're seeing the prairie Massasaugas the most. They're probably the most common venomous snake in like the, I don't know, we'll say the western 2/3. Okay. And then on the eastern border, we get mostly copperheads. To the north, it is pure easterns, and then in the, we'll say, bottom half of the eastern side, you start to get Laticinctus and Phaeogaster hybrids.
Interesting.
Okay. Broadbands are officially listed in the state. However, I don't know of any genetic analysis that has shown a pure broad-banded copperhead. So you do get timber rattlesnakes throughout the eastern portion as well, although they are on the decline, like in a lot of their range. But second to the Massasauga is definitely the prairie rattlesnakes. So those are our 4 big ones. Then we do have an introduced population of western diamondbacks into one of our parks.
Wow.
Yeah, it's kind of weird.
Yeah.
But when you go to that park and see it, you're like, oh man, that's Aatrox habitat. It is disjunct from their native range, so it's not like it was just some relic population.
Yeah.
There have been some sightings of wild Aatrox on the southern border in the past 5-6 years, so there is the potential for them to be moving upward. But when you look at the data points, though, it is right there on that border. So it's a close call and a coin toss, depending on the day, what you want to call it. But there have been at least 2 that were deep enough into the state that you can 100% call it a native find.
Okay.
Wow.
And it's open ranch land there. It's not like it's developed, so it's pure wild.
Just enough that it's keeping them just past the border for the most part.
So we're wondering if, because it's been getting steadily warmer here, if it's just like allowing them to kind of encroach just so much into the state.
Right.
I mean, and by warmth, I mean like my boss goes to Arizona once a year, and for about the past 7 or 8 years, he goes to Arizona. We're hotter in Kansas, where we're at in the south. We have a lot of nights where it doesn't get below 90 until like midnight. So that's what I mean by increase in warmth. It's not what you would expect in Great Plains states, but it's where we're at right now.
What's historical, like average, or what would you expect normally?
Normally you'd expect it to be about 10 degrees cooler during the summertime, 80, 85. But man, we're just creeping up in those summer months. Where it's quite frankly unbearable a lot of times, and it just kills the herping. And that's why, going back to my earlier comment about road cruising from 9 p.m. to 5 a.m., it's
getting some of that cool.
Exactly. Like you can road cruise all evening and nothing will happen. Man, the minute 2 a.m. hits, it's just like a migration of snakes across the road.
Really?
Where I like to go anyway.
Yeah. Is it like a dew point thing, do you think? Or, I mean, are they getting some moisture in the air, or is it just cold enough?
90?
Yeah.
I think it's just temperature, once it gets down to like mid to low 80s, high 70s, it's just everything moves really quick, and then everything shuts back down again.
Wow. Man, that's got to be rough on the sleep schedule to you have to wait till 2 to get.
It's become a habit of mine on the weekend to take a nap midday and sleep for as long as I can, and then drink a coffee and then just head on out.
Yeah.
So
that's cool.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
so what is I guess what's the seasonality you would say where you find snakes nowadays? Like if someone wanted to come on a trip, maybe to see Massasaugas, when should they come?
Well, now's about the time.
Okay.
Although I will say this year's been oddly cool still, so it's not the best, uh, not the best to recommend it this year. But on an average year, you can start coming out and finding them kind of out in the rock piles where they're denning. Not road cruising weather yet. That's probably going to be another month away. But as far as flipping and finding them kind of out and about, now's the time. So the hardest part is that in our state, it's a lot of private land, lot of private land. So you either have to find some nice rock cuts that are public property right on the side of the road where you feel safe to get out there and flip, walk in hunting areas that have a lot of rock flipping, or you've got to know some people that are going to let you go on their land. So that's our biggest hurdle. If you can find any one of those, you're in for a good time.
Right.
We went out.
We're kind of spoiled in the West with public lands. It's a beautiful thing.
Oh man, I went to New Mexico last year for a herping trip, and it was amazing being able to just kind of go where we wanted to.
Right.
And
and so then is there kind of a lull in the summer, or is it just that 2 a.m. window for cruising that you can find them and then pick back up in the fall, or what does that look like?
Yeah, you're definitely going late at night, or you're just not going at all. It gets to a point where you start to really question what you're doing, quite frankly. Now, that I should also mention, this is a very specific part of Kansas I like to go to because of the variety of species there. If you're going in the eastern portion to the forest, I don't even try. It's hot, it's dry, nothing is moving. Those places I like to hit in spring, early summer, or fall. If I'm going out west, you can go year round, but there is going to be that lull in the heat. So you either need to pack up for a late night or just plan on not going until things get look a little better. But I'm an addict and I can't stop, so I go anyway.
You might as well go anyway, right? So what do like ideal conditions look like relative to that? I know sometimes, right, the common refrain was always rain is, in the desert, rain is good. It brings everything out. Whereas in the rainforest, we found that rain is not good because it's like they just say, okay, well, I'll just hang out. Unless they're a scrub python, then they'll come out. That's the only thing that rain. So is rain generally good? Like having just rained is good, but you still need the, kind of enough left in the day to. No, Justin and I have seen this in Arizona, right? Yeah. The rain's too late in the day, really cools things out and kind of kills it, as opposed to rain sort of in the afternoon. You still have the sun, so you still get that warmth going. That's a good thing. Rain yesterday versus, a sprinkle right now. Any of those things things to mind?
I definitely think that rain early in the morning, big sunny day, kind of dries out a little bit, but you get that humidity spike. That's going to be a good night. If you're going for copperheads, my God, it like sets them off. I mean, they really come out. In the western portions, it does become more like, I'm going to use New Mexico. That's the only state I've had experience with in the western portion. It does act more like that. You get a good rain, and it dries out just enough where there's some warmth. And the animals are moving. They're trying to get that moisture.
Very cool.
I guess, the other kind of thing, what do you consider to be sort of the easy or kind of, easy targets versus tough targets for the area that you like to go?
Okay, so just to clarify that, I like to herp in a portion. It's about 2 hours. I'm going to be as vague and yet specific as I can be. It's about 2 hours west from me, and it's like a little slice of Arizona got plopped like right into Kansas. There's some red mesas and very like red clay soil, and the species diversity there really broadens to things like night snakes, long-nosed snakes, black-headed snakes, which I know some guys and some of my friends in Arizona laugh. They're like, they're throwaways here, man. Like, not here. They're a treasure here. So I'd say the easiest target of all is going to be a Western Massasauga or a prairie rattlesnake. And then after that's going to be a decay snake. And we have counted 100 plus in one night road cruising of decay snakes, nothing else.
That's what.
It was a weird night. We only stopped counting because the driver's neck started to hurt, and he's like, "I'm not stopping if it's not rattlesnake size any longer." Those are going to be your big three, and then depending on the year, you'll get splatterings that'll kind of change. Like for example, I would have said up until last year, prairie king snakes are one of the most common, and then everything went on like head over heels last year, and it's speckled kings now. I saw almost no prairie king snakes in the exact same spot I've been seeing them for 3.5 years, and I only found speckled kings.
Wow.
And the same thing with the rattlesnakes. For 2 years, I saw way more Massasaugas and no prairie rattlers. The past 2.5 years, it's been all prairie rattlesnakes, followed by Massasaugas, but there's definitely been a numbers switch with them. So I hope that answered your question. I'm kind of just rambling at this point.
So what's on the opposite end? What are the tough to find? Like where it's realistic they're there, but like what would be your biggest win? You know, you say you go out and you spend a bunch of time, and then it's what would be the thing you'd be most thrilled to find?
Oh man, definitely an Atrox or a checkered garter. Those are like rare, if not even potentially not in the state anymore. But more realistically, a long-nosed snake, like that is not common. Let's see. I always like finding a black-headed snake. You don't always find them, and when you do, I always get a smile on my face. Thread snakes, we do get thread snakes out here. We've got some ground snakes and night snakes. I'd say those are the big ones where when you see them, you know you've had a really fun night.
Very cool.
That's cool.
Oh, of course, hognose. How did I not think about those? Like we've got easterns and westerns. Like of course, you know. That being said, I've yet to find a live eastern, much to my chagrin. But you know, we found a western at like 11:50 at night once, so that was kind of a fun moment. Like it was hunting little spadefoot toads across the road. We were like, yes, this is fantastic.
Yeah, that's
very cool.
That's a neat observation too, to see them, you know, engaging in that kind of activity. That's cool.
Yeah,
very nice.
Very cool. And what do the eastern hognose look like out your way?
Man, so they're not dark. They're not that melanistic form. I don't know how to describe them other than having like the yellow and kind of like greenish blotches. I don't know if that's the best way to describe them, but that's what I have found on the dead ones anyway. I'm told they're not that hard to find. You just have to know the spot. I have a friend that literally told me he was just walking by a field once and there was an eastern hognose there. I'm like, I had a coworker that showed me a photo of a snake. He was like, "Hey, this was in my bed last night. What is this?" It was an eastern hog. Like it's silly. Like it's just been really bad luck.
Yeah,
but
that's crazy.
Very cool. Let's see.
Any other herping questions there, Rob? Or?
Right. Well, I think mostly, you know, my selfish purposes or whatever, were pretty good. The kind of the thing we love to ask, and you've hit on it a little bit, right, in terms of saying that you went to New Mexico, but are there other areas that you've herped, and talking through that a little bit, and then simultaneously kind of what's on your bucket list in terms of places to go or things to see?
So I really started to broaden out the past year and seeing other places to herp. For a while, I was pretty ingrained in Kansas and just enjoying driving where I could in my own state. So last year I did New Mexico. I really don't know why I got that hair up my ass. Oh wait, I hope that's okay to say on this. But I really wanted to see a Trans-Pecos rat snake, but not in Texas, in New Mexico. So I don't know why I decided that. I decided it though. Did not get it. But it was pretty incredible to be able to go from the lowland desert up into the highland the dry pine oak forests and look
Yeah.
for Sacramento mountain salamanders.
Hmm.
I've done a little bit in California, just south of LA, and got a couple rattlesnakes off my list, but it was a very short trip, so it was just kind of see what you can while you can.
Sure.
I'd say the Ruber was the biggest win of that trip.
Yeah.
In particular, I went down for the reptile talks, and
Okay.
I feel bad. I really liked the talks, but like to know I was in Ruber habitat and not looking for a Ruber,
Yeah.
I just had to like take a morning and go look for it. And, one of the local guys there was like, "Oh yeah, go here, and there's going to be a big rock pile, and just like start walking." I'm like, "Oh, do I flip? Do I do it?" He's like, "No, just walk." And yeah, sure enough, there's this big rock pile behind the suburbs, and there's just speckled rattlers out basking on top of it. And after about an hour and a half of doing that, we leave, and there's a Ruber coming out from this little woodlot and just basking right out in the sunshine. It was the most incredible spot of luck I've ever had. That was
That's
a
cool.
fantastic little trip. Let's see. Oh, sorry.
Oh, that was the reptile talks.
Yeah.
I'm considering doing that this year. Alan's been on me to come out and see him, so I need to go out and support that. I think it's a cool thing.
It was a really good time. I was hoping to go this year, but with my vacation time, I had to make some choices, which is, do I want to go to the reptile talks, or going back to Rob's question, do I want to go herp West Texas?
Right.
And I chose West Texas. So that's what I'd like. That's what we're doing this year, me and my buddies. And my target is a Trans-Pecos rat snake. I really want to see a Trans-Pecos rat snake.
Yeah.
I've done a little bit in Arizona, but by the time I got there, it was November, and my friends were just kind of humoring me.
Yeah.
So they're like, "Yeah, we'll go look for chucks." I'm like, "You never know. You never know. The chuckwallas might be out." But no, they were not out.
Yeah.
But we did go up by Payson and look for the large blotch encetinas that were introduced up in the mountains.
Cool.
Found some of those. That was a really fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And because you can legally collect them, and I'm a salamander nerd, I did pack them up, and they are right over there in my basement right now.
Very cool. Yeah, they're beautiful salamanders. They're really nice looking. Yeah.
Well, and they're so weird. I know it's not the topic of field herping, but it's a salamander that if you get too wet, it dies. So you've got to keep it dry but humid. And the only way I can describe to take good care of them is to basically just ignore them completely and cross your fingers. I mean, I truly cannot say I've ever paid less attention to an animal, and they're getting fatter. I mean, they're growing, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah,
that's very cool.
Yeah, good luck with those.
No, thank you.
That's fun. I still need to. We looked a bit for them, but they weren't kind of the top of the list or anything. But I'm surprised we didn't run across any because it was raining like crazy while we were there, and
it was raining.
It was too
cold.
wet. It was cold too.
Yeah, man. I think it was just pure luck. I mean, because my boss has gone there in July, and he found 5. Wow. And I went in November when it was cold and had just rained, and we worked to get the 3 that we found, and I mean worked.
Yeah.
And then I had a local herper tell me that he's gone out and caught like 20 in 30 minutes. Yeah. So I don't understand them. I'm surprised. I whatever they're doing, I truly don't understand.
Salamanders salamanders can be definitely difficult to key in on when they're going to be crazy active. Just in abundance. Find the here and there. But, right. Yeah. Not that I don't know much about salamanders, but and we have a whole one in our state that salamanders. So I found all the salamanders in Utah, which I like to brag about a lot. But same kind of thing. Like you'll see them on rainy days, sometimes out on the road, or crawling around or falling in somebody's window well or something like that. But otherwise, you'll see the larvae in the ponds up in the mountains and stuff, but you're not going to see adults much unless it rains hard.
Man, I've tried to key in on them in Kansas by going out in the rainy nights, and all I've gotten out of it is a stuck vehicle and like a bunch
Yeah.
of an empty gas tank.
Right.
I'm no good at it.
Mhm.
I'm happy to flip for salamanders in the woods, but I think I'm done trying to road cruise tiger
Right.
sows and
Yeah. Yeah.
smallmouths. But
Mhm. Yep. I collected several of the the larval form and raised those up, and they're a lot of fun. The tiger salamanders are really fun amphibians. But
yeah,
yeah.
just a side note for anybody listening, I'm gonna plug salamanders for a second. I mean,
Hmm.
they truly are. They're a gummy crocodile with the color of a poison dart frog or a guppy. Like give them a chance, you'll
Yeah.
appreciate them. But anyways, I apologize.
No, I agree wholeheartedly. They have a really fun personality, kind of dopey, but like you said, almost like an alligator or something. They'll go after anything they think they can overpower, and yeah, they're fun. I really enjoyed keeping those tiger salamanders. Yeah, I mean those fire salamanders. I don't think you could get much prettier herp than those. They're just incredible. So
I've really fallen sucker to all the fire belly newts. I don't know, they're
yeah.
dopey, they're colorful, and I don't know, they're hardy. So
Right. Have you ever done any East Coast trips out to like the Appalachia or anything to look for salamanders? And
I've done some work trips where we had like 24 hours. We're like,
Mhm.
well, it's raining and we're in North Carolina. Let's go look for
Sure.
salamanders.
Yeah.
I just remember like we drove down this this I don't want to call it a canyon, but it was a road that kind of went down into a valley, and there was just rock on all sides, and salamanders were just like falling out of the crevices. I mean,
Wow.
we were constantly stopping and just like taking a look at all of them.
Yeah.
And of all things, it was like 55 degrees out, and there was what's the word? A copperhead out and about.
Huh.
Which in my state, I feel like that's almost unheard of. But this animal was just out and hunting the salamanders like it was no big deal.
Yeah.
And I completely forgot to mention, I've also, going back to Rob's question again, I've herped Idaho and Montana briefly as well for rubber boas.
Hmm.
Let's see, there's a population of rough skin newt up there that we
Cool.
look for. Let's see, long-toed salamanders, alligator lizards. Those were the big targets. So
very cool. Did you find any rubber bows?
yes, we did.
Nice.
Awesome.
Idaho is a no collect state, so you can't collect from Idaho, but you can in Montana.
Yeah.
So on the way out of Idaho, we found a bunch of rubber boas there. When we went to Montana, my boss went. We were up there for his, work purposes. My boss crashed at the hotel. I grabbed the rental and I started driving, and I was about to give up. It was 11:40 at night and 46 degrees, and I saw this male start crawling across the road. I grabbed him and I like kind of did this little just like victory scream in the car, like yes, I collected my own rubber boa. So
Nice.
and yeah, he's living over there right now. So
Yeah.
Very cool.
They're very interesting and cool snakes for sure. Yeah, very different than the typical snake you get in Idaho or Utah or Montana or whatever.
Yeah, I don't know how you guys feel about it, but I'm okay with the what's the word? Regulated trade of wild herps, so long as they're collected legally and collected legally and in a non-commercial manner. So I hope it doesn't offend you guys me talking about it, but I really appreciate being able to go out and collect my own herbs, know the locality, and it makes it more important to me in the future.
Mhm.
You know, I can always go buy. I can go buy a rubber boa, but I'm always going to remember seeing that fan cross the road,
Right.
and so
Yeah.
Yeah, no worries. I mean, it'd be hypocritical of us, to be wholeheartedly against it at a minimum, because like we're just then externalizing the cost of saying, oh, it's okay that I'm working with Indonesian species that were collected by someone else or whatever.
Yeah.
So I think there's, certainly there's that aspect to it. I think the sort of non-commercial aspect that you highlight there, is important to us, and taking it for a purpose and to value it, those are critical components.
I did collect my first Utah Cal King under a permit, of course.
Oh, nice.
But I came across and I'm like, man, he's just gonna get hit by a car. He was out on the road, It's like, it's lucky I found him because he would have been dead otherwise, because he was just out in the middle of the road. So I'm like, yeah, he's coming home with me. I'd seen so many DORs before I found my first live one that I'm like, yeah, I think he's coming home. And then got a female for him not too long later. Yeah.
Right?
Well, actually, the female was gravid, and so she laid eggs, and so I gave some to some folks that were interested in some locality, Cal Kings, and then I took some back and released them where we found the female. So, just trying to put back what she might have put there anyway. Give them a little head start with some bunch of pinkies and stuff, and then turn them loose. But yeah, it's I have nothing against it other than like the folks we saw in Texas that were just indiscriminately picking up,
trip,
collecting whatever they found, and we just had the misfortune of kind of rolling in behind
going
them,
to similar spots.
Where they were just leaving with buckets of stuff they collect, and we're like, that's awesome. He's like, oh, you want to see this? It's you're seeing it in a bucket instead of on the crawl. Like,
honestly, no, I'd rather not.
Right. It's kind of frustrating. But, that's one that you need to find out in West Texas is the cuculata, the big old tantilla black-headed snake.
Oh, yeah.
So impressive. We only saw a DOR, but it was a beautiful animal, really nice looking. So hopefully you'll get to see one of those. They're really cool.
Oh man, that'd be. I'm trying to keep a low expectation because now that I know how the desert works,
right?
I did not understand New Mexico at all, so I was baffled when I was like, I don't understand it. The temps are good, and then the monsoon rains sort of are explained to me. I'm like, oh no. So whatever happens in West Texas, I'll be happy. But I'd be stoked to see one of those.
Yeah, just like get your neck ready to be staring up at rocks all night.
It's something, man.
Yeah, it's a different animal for sure, but it is fun though. Yeah, we had a good time out there. So yeah.
I mean, we've been you've been twice, and I've been three times now. Yeah, and I still have to go back. Still have to see the Trans-Pecos copperhead.
I'd like to see a live cuculata. That would be really cool. I still need to see a lep, and the copperhead as well.
So my buddies found a cloudberry in New Mexico last year, and I was so focused on trying to find a stupid Madrian alligator lizard that I kept driving up this mountain for 3 days, and they all got, understandably, they're like, we don't want to go back up the mountain. We're done. So they texted me while I'm headed up the last time, and they're like, hey, do you know if Alterna are here? And it's just little curled up lepidus. I'm like, ha ha, funny.
Yeah.
Jokes on them. I got my alligator lizard finally. But I need to see a lep this year.
Yeah. So. Yeah, the alligator lizards are fun. Yeah, we saw one in West Texas and several in Arizona, and they're
California.
Yeah.
Oh, they're
cool for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good stuff. Well, are you ready to fight a bit here?
I think we should.
I guess we got to live up to our name here. But, all right. Well, tonight we're going to talk about photography. So, I guess do you fancy yourself a photographer? Or
not at all?
No.
No, I have this really cool camera called an iPhone.
Okay. Yeah. That's kind of what I've resorted to as well, but I'm kind of regretting it after this last trip. I mean, I'm looking at some of the guys' pictures, and then I'm like, maybe I do need a better camera. I'd like, well, we can talk about that, but yeah, so that's the topic tonight. We're going to fight about, to photo or not to photo with, real gear. I know Rob is definitely a real gear man, and he's, he takes takes the time to take some good pictures. So, I'm sure it'll be a lively debate. So, all right. Let's see. Rob and I will flip the coin first. So Rob, go ahead and call it.
Tails.
It is tails. You have won. would you like to battle with David, or would you like to defer?
I'd like to moderate. I think
Oh,
this will be more fun. Yeah, I want
okay.
to hear from you guys, and then I'll have my own takes on the side. So I think this will
Okay.
be more fun.
Sounds good. We'll have two phoners arguing here.
Yeah.
All right. Go ahead and call the next one, Dave.
We'll say heads.
Heads. It is heads. I'm a double
right.
loser this week. So
Oh my goodness.
would you like to take the iPhone centric view or the real photographer view?
I'll take the iPhone centric view only because I'm more familiar with it.
Okay. Sounds good.
I'd say my viewpoint only comes from the fact that I'm so greedy that I want to get right back out herping.
Right.
That for me, if I can get a quick shot where the snake isn't blurry, I'm like, awesome. All right, on to the next one. I used to like showing off photographs every once in a while on Facebook, but the more I've done it, the more I'm not interested. I mean, it's more fun when it's just me and my buddies out in the car. We're like, oh my god, you see that?
Yeah.
And I like to take a quick voucher shot just so I have the GPS coordinates. And if it is something that I think is important, I'll take those GPS coordinates and I'll put it onto the Kansas Herp Atlas as a citizen science voucher.
Sure.
Within reason, obviously, we don't want to be plastering every find onto an atlas. But I don't know. I don't like to show off all my photos. I don't really like to show off everything I find. I just kind of am growing more to live in the moment. I'll then fight myself and say, sometimes though you do find something so cool, you do have to show some people it. So I don't know. I guess I'm somewhere in the middle. Maybe I'm doing a bad job on this show. I don't know. I don't know.
That's fine. No, I completely agree. Like a lot of times I'm looking at it, and I think for me it was like patience. I wasn't patient enough, or I didn't want to learn it, or I was kind of resistant for some reason, because my dad and my brother are pretty good photographers, and I have a cousin who's like a semi-professional photographer, and so I probably had the people that could have taught me and showed me how to do it right, but then it's like, well, they're doing landscapes, or they're not really interested in macro shots of a snake or a lizard or something, so I just kind of resorted to the phone. But that said too, like I like to kind of relive the moment through my photos, and so for the most part I think an iPhone captures it all right, but for some of those really cool like you said, the ones that you find that you're just so over the moon about, and you're willing to spend a couple hours just staring at it or taking pictures or whatever, watching it crawl around in the bush, those are those special ones where I'm like, I really would like something that kind of just captures that to a greater degree. And so being on this last trip in Central Australia, we just, had such good luck finding so many cool things. And, I look at Jordan's pictures and Aspen's and Nick's pictures of like the Brettles carpet. I'm just like, man, I wish mine looked like that. It's fine for an iPhone photo, but like, yeah, I kind of wish it was a little more crisp and clear.
It'd almost be easier if they were only yours, right? Like, if the photo of the animal was your photo, and you say, "Oh, this is the best," as compared to even my stuff, right? Comparing it to when it's with Aspen, or the quality of the stuff from Jordan, then it does make yours feel less than, right? Because as much as you say I have fancy photos and things which I like to think I do, I have photos that I like. It certainly is, a much more limited kit than what all those guys are bringing out there. I know we're talking about the Grand Canyon trip, and Phil had, I think it was on Venomous Exchange Radio, had highlighted like, oh, well, Nipper's photo of the Grand Canyon rattlesnake, taken in pitch black on a new moon, whatever. He's like, oh, just look at, Nipper, your head scalation photo is so much better than Rob's. And I'm like, his kit costs 10 times what mine does. So.
Right. Yeah. And sometimes I maybe get a little prideful if my iPhone photos take a decent shot. And granted, iPhones aren't cheap necessarily, but it's like, and the I'm going on your side here, but they're not the worst photos for sure. And so people say, "Oh wow, that's a nice shot." And I'm like, yeah, I just kind of, I do think there is something to the composition of the photo. It's not just necessarily the tech. And I think I really admire those the guys that got photos on film with the old school cameras. You look at some of those photos and you're like, okay, now that's a real photographer. I don't think I could work that magic no matter what kind of tech I had. But
we cheat in volume for sure. Certainly I do.
Right.
Yeah. In a way that you couldn't on 24 pictures.
Yeah. And I think the resources are out there, and I think the other thing that kind of is difficult for me was the amount and the size of room that was taken up by camera gear. And I mean, Jordan, his camera suitcase or case was like this Fort Knox case for his camera gear. Carrying it around, it was like probably 60-70 pounds. Like, it was insane. So, and I'm sure he had to pay a little bit extra to get that on the plane and all that kind of thing. So it's pretty crazy. So, but the pictures he got are pretty phenomenal. So I have found myself looking at cameras on, B&H photo gear and stuff. And I can see, that would be nice. And, where I've been doing the books and using my pictures for the books. A lot of them are my iPhone shots, but it would be nice to, I look at some of the other photographers and seeing some of their shots and being like, okay, they're much better. We're going to put those up, up forefront rather than my phoners. But, I guess, I see a real clear benefit of having a nice photograph or a well compositioned or lighted photograph. Another example, sorry, just to throw this one in there, going back to Rob's Grand Canyon rattlesnake photo. Rob's photos are they're a different color than my photos, and there is a lot to be said about having good lighting, not just necessarily a good camera. And that's something that really wasn't very clear to me. I need to do better if I'm going to get a real camera. I also need a good, kind of external flash that you hold in the right spot and take your pictures that way. Cause it really does make a difference. Cause you can have the most expensive camera in the world, and if you're not using correct lighting on a herp at night, you're not going to get a great shot, whether or not you have a mirrorless, ZX6 or whatever from Nikon. Yeah.
Oh, and to play devil's advocate again, I think a large part of it also is where you're at with your herping personally. Mm-hmm. When we were up in New Mexico, I was with Eric McCormick and Chris Sirchione, along with my friends Jake Milbrat and actually Behoff. You guys might know him. My friend Nate Haney. But Eric and Chris Sirchione are amazing photographers. My goodness, are they? Mm. So my first lifer I had to find there was a Sacramento mountain salamander, and of course first thing we flipped, boom, it's right there. Mm. So I get my quick photo and I'm like, oh, this is awesome. I got to go find more. And for me, it was taking in the forest and flipping logs. Chris, a much more experienced New Mexico herper, was able to sit down with his very, very heavy and large photographic equipment and get a decent photograph of the animal, make it look like it was, freshly flipped, colors correct. It's not blurry. It looks like it just punched right out of the photograph to get to you guys, because he's at that part. I don't know. I feel like that plays a part in it too. I am impatient. I need to be out there, I don't know, physically touching the forest and getting onto that next animal. So
I agree, and I will say I'm the same way. We had that story, kind of a humor story, but we found Gila monster. We found 3 or 4 times in so many years, and so I kind of made the joke of like, oh, I've seen this one, I'm going to go find another one, because Gila monsters are so easy to find in Utah. And so, but I got lucky and walked, maybe an eighth of a mile and found another one just crawling on the red rocks. And I was, of course, very stoked. I'm like, got another one. They're like, yeah, right. I'm like, no, really. And I've done that, a few times where we're photographing one thing and I'll get impatient and go find another one or something. You got to be careful too, because I was talking to Rob while I was walking and looking at him taking pictures of this sidewinder, and all of a sudden there's a rattle at my feet. There's a sidewinder right by my shoes there, so it's a little sketchy. But yeah, you still need to pay attention to where you're walking, even if you're near where they're. And same with Rob when he was photographing that the tiger.
The tiger. Right? Yeah. I mean, well, and I was going to say, I know I've mentioned this before, but Justin, with that sidewinder spot, that's the only place I've been where, people who are afraid of snakes or talk about a place being like infested with snakes or whatever, especially on the right night or whatever. Right. And that's the only place I've been where, in terms of rattlesnakes, that would be the case, where it's like sidewinders in that spot when it's going. Yeah, that same night I almost stepped on one too. That I'd forgotten that, we'd already had, I'd seen that one or whatever. And then, they're truly, can be wild densities. Yeah. And the tiger rattlesnake thing, because I would fall firmly into the box of spending a long time, taking pictures of stuff and having to send Justin away. Just say, go ahead. And, so they actually physically drove away and we're gone for like 45 minutes or something like that, as I'm working with an increasingly agitated tiger rattlesnake, and to the point where I then had to move it down the road. So they had stopped the car where they were, almost stepped on it getting out, like all sorts of, potential pandemonium associated with it. But, and a lyre snake, presumably attracted to the light, was about to play the big practical joke on me. So I'm sitting facing a cut. And so, as I say, I moved it probably 20 feet down the tiger, 20 feet down the road, having been sitting there maybe 2 or 3 feet from it as it's backed up into a cut. And then, so they stopped, we're chatting. One car had gone through and the guys are like, hey, what's that in the road back where I was? And the answer is it's a lyre snake that had been hit and presumably been on the light, or to play the all-time practical joke on me as I'm face forward into a tiger rattlesnake, was going to crawl up my back, which would have been a sensation for sure. It's probably to my benefit that the whole thing played out that way, but it was a huge bummer because we've seen the Utah ones that Dustin turned up, but I haven't seen an Arizona one yet. I don't think, at least not. I've seen live ones, but not in terms of finding them ourselves on our trip. So.
Yeah, that's I guess maybe another benefit too of those photographs is like a lot of times I want to print them out and put them on the wall or something like that, and if they're on your iPhone, you're probably not going to have very large photos of your photography, and that, I guess, depending on what year you're using or something, but that's another nice thing. You can adorn your walls with your own photographs and really, capture that moment and kind of cement that moment in time. You can look back at the pictures and remember. And I think that's a really nice thing to be able to do, is have that option. But
oh, you guys might be swaying me.
Well, and of course, the other part of it that plays out, and this is Justin's story, but I'll lead him into it, is that if only, we knew what the final tally or the final result of either action would be. Right. So, and just talking about your WA WOMA, right, where it's like, okay, you took good pictures, but at the same time, the desire to, maybe I'll see something else. You then,
right, we kind of hit one or came upon one just right out on the outskirts of town, and it was on this famous stretch where you can find both blackheads and womas, and we were thinking, oh well, if this is the way the night's starting out, it was just after dusk, just on we're just getting into road cruising phase. I'm like, this is going to be epic night. And that was like the only snake we saw. it was pretty dead after that. And so, knowing, having if I would have known that we weren't going to find anything else, I probably would have spent hours with that snake, instead of saying, let's get on the road and find more. It's really hard to predict. So I guess we could have, if Rob was there, we could have left him with the snake and gone up the road 10 minutes and come back or something. But so I do regret that. So on this latest trip, we found a woma as well in Central Australia. We spent probably 2 hours with that, just kind of watching it and taking pictures and things like that. And it was typical woma, didn't want to sit still and didn't, just kind of had to follow it and wait for it to, kind of stop for a minute and take some pictures. But so cool.
That happened to me last year, where I had a friend come out to Kansas specifically to see a timber. And we did not find a timber, and it irritated me to no end because I took him near a den site. So I'm like, I trust this guy. This is a gimme.
Yeah.
So later on, I'm like, you know what? I got to go find a timber. And within 20 minutes of hitting the road, the timber, a fisherman's tale. It was the best one ever. But it's very good sized timber, and we're 5 in. Already like, come on, we gotta go find more. Yeah, wouldn't you know it, after the next 4 hours we'd seen one timber rattlesnake. And much like you, if I had appreciated the moment a little more and taken some photographs, it might have been a better night. But I was a little too impatient, and of course,
yeah.
And there are times like the Gila monster story that Justin mentioned, where like obviously the first Gila was awesome, and it's cool that then you guys have seen that 3 or 4 times over all these years and stuff, and so it was cool for that to be a first one. But in terms of sort of being photogenic and beautiful, the one that you went off to find and found was a much younger animal, and just the vibrancy. The body form was immaculate, just like perfect, just textbook Utah perfect Gila monster. So if your impatience didn't come into play, we don't see that one. I would have been happy to see one, but it's the old man in the desert, this kind of a little bit beaten down. And we know that he's been around a long time.
Yeah.
As opposed to the one that you found that was probably just on adult and exquisite.
Yeah. Perfect animal. And similar with that was the clob in Arizona, where Owen found that clobber eye, and it was kind of a smaller individual. And I kind of jokingly said, well, I'm just going to go find a better one, or so I'll find a bigger one or something. And sure enough, I walked over and it was actually in some artificial cover, but it was between like a sandwich. So it was inside this piece of metal. And so I like kind of lifted it and there was nothing under it, but then I set it down and I heard a rattle. I'm like, what was that? It's like, it's inside it. And so, took a little careful manipulation to get that snake to kind of drop out or whatever. But yeah, that was kind of that same kind of thing where, let's
so it does, but there
one.
are times where it pays off. Yeah. And I suppose the point is, and maybe that's half the fun of doing it in groups and when you can accommodate different preferences, I guess maybe that's the lesson we've learned and I have really come to appreciate, is saying, like, I will say, I don't want the feeling of feeling like I'm burdening your experience. So you guys go and then we'll, I'm happy to take that loss should you then walk shortly away and, wasn't there to see it, find it on the initial discovery or whatever. Like, I'm happy to play to my preference. Right.
Yeah.
And then simultaneously not be impinging on your experience.
Sure. Yeah. And I think too, like, I think there is something to be said about having that patience and, not necessarily just to get a good picture, but also just to enjoy the animal. And, granted, it is difficult because you want to go find the next one, but a lot of times, like, especially local herping where, I've seen a bunch of the stuff that's in my area. It's not like it's some new, like you're kind of used to it or you've seen, X number before or whatever. So it is kind of commonplace, but at the same time, you can you're not so like, oh, I got to get pictures of this thing. I got to pose it up and sit it in the right position and sit there and take, pictures from every angle for the next 2 hours. You can just kind of take your voucher shot or even not take a shot and just watch the animal and enjoy what it's doing and maybe see some natural history or something, like I think that appeals to me as well, and I guess it's hard when you're flying halfway across the world to find some of these things. You do want to find everything you can and, kind of have the, let's split up into 2 different groups. So you go that way, we'll go this way, see what we can, stay on the radio or whatever. But, and sometimes that bites you in the butt too, because the other car that I was not in found this beautiful Western brown snake that was that, the black-headed, orange form. They're just gorgeous, and everybody of course wants to see that form, but they found it and they were playing with it, trying to radio us, and we were out of range or something, so we didn't get to see that animal. So there are those kind of Rob's coral snake is another good example too. Like sometimes it's not worth the risk to try to pose it or get a picture, and it's just the experience. We saw this, and that was I know I saw a coral, but I have no evidence to
right. I know what day it was, but it still needs photo. Yeah,
right,
absolutely.
right, yeah, and things like that. I mean, you don't want to be getting bit by a coral snake out in the middle of Florida somewhere, and
especially not a 3-footer that looks like a king snake.
Right. That actually could bite you. As opposed to the one we found in Arizona that's there, New Mexico.
Noodle,
there's no way to. It could have bit you. So but
absolutely.
That's same kind of thing where and the guys like tried to keep it, corral it, or keep it out in the open as long as they could, but it's going down a hole and we can't really stop it, and it's not worth the risk to try to stop it either. And of course, if you get bit, that kind of wrecks the trip a bit too, because then you got to go find a hospital instead of herping, and that's not great. And you don't want to say to your friend, hey, good luck, I hope you make it to the hospital, or draw straws to see who gets to miss out on herping to go to the hospital. So that's not the greatest thing either. So sometimes it's just not worth it to try to get a picture, even if it's with your iPhone. It's sometimes, but then again, like I've learned the hard way, like try to get the picture first before you go for the grab, because even when I have a nice camera, like I had an experience with a striped tail monitor in Western Australia, Catalineatus. It was sitting just posed beautifully on a trunk of a tree, and it was like low on the tree, and it was in a position where I'm thinking, okay, I could probably grab. This is probably a no risk situation. I'll catch it, then I'll pose it up and take, but in reality, I should have taken 20 pictures while it was sitting in that pose. And instead I'm like, oh, monitor, grab it, that kind of thing. And I went to grab it and I missed it, and it completely just disappeared. I'm like, luckily my wife was there and she's like, yeah, I did see that lizard. Like, I'm like, you saw that, right? It was there, right? Like, because it was just vanished. Like I had no clue where it ran to or where it went. I'm just like scratching my head like an idiot. So take a picture first, even if it's just a little dumb voucher photo. But I should have sat there and taken 30 pictures, and I was young and wanted to grab everything or something. I don't know. Of course, I didn't grab anything in Australia because that would be illegal.
Only cane toads.
Yeah, only cane toads. I'm surprised they're not protected. But was listening to Scott Eiper talk about what you can and can't do in Australia, and I'm like, nobody abides by those rules. Why is that a rule? Like nobody abides by them, and then they don't prosecute anybody for them either. So it's like, I don't know, it's kind of goofy. We were out. There was a YouTube influencer, whatever you want to call him, that was out in Central Australia at the same time we were. And I actually was talking to the owner of the Alice Springs Reptile Center. He was talking. They saw this guy out filming, and harassing animals or whatever. And he'd found a Centralian knobtail gecko and was like picking it up and talking about it for his channel. And he was in a national park, and they got film of him doing that. And he's like, do you think you could delete that film? And it was like some German group that had hired or paid the guy from the reptile center to go out and show them around or whatever. And they're like, nope, we're keeping that. Blackmail, I don't know, but they're like, we're doing a documentary on idiots handling reptiles that they shouldn't be handling. I don't know, so of course you want to obey the rules and try to keep your distance. And granted, that's another thing about photography is like a lot of times we're finding it under a piece of garbage and then we're posing it in pristine habitat, and it kind of gives people the wrong idea of like what's really going on, like
well, right. That's speaking of Australia, and exactly on this point, right, is I know Eric had mentioned this the first time we had gone. So we went up to Cairns and surrounds, and he was insistent perpetually on looking for snakes amongst the buttress roots of trees, because in Australia where you can't handle them, it's sort of a natural containment, system. And it was we were probably halfway through the trip, and he was like, "Oh, they just put them there so that they don't move." Like, it's not that that's where they were actually found.
Right.
Like, yeah, I came to the same conclusion. Like if you just took the photos at face value, it's like, oh, you need to be looking right here. And it was like, no, that's more to do with how they were taking these photos than it is the natural condition.
Right.
I had a friend tell me we were talking about Xanthusia and where he used to find them in California. I was like, oh, are these like rock escarpments? Like, are you flipping? Like, how are you finding them? He's like, well, I go to the dump and I flip whatever's there. I'm like, okay, that's not that's not really filmable habitat,
right?
But no, it's
no,
funny.
Exactly
like,
right.
We get caught up doing these like what people want to see as far as like a habitat photo of the animal. We even when we try not to doctor it, we're doctoring it just a little bit to make it look a little more aesthetically pleasing.
Yeah.
Well, on that same trip, on the way out to Chillago, there were a bunch of records on Atlas of Living Australia for, I think it was an a Storai.
Storai. Yep.
And if I then was like looking more closely at it, combined with sort of we have such greater tech now in terms of the the outdoor app and the Onyx app and these sorts of things where you can see land ownership and things or whatever. But it's very clear, to your point, Dave, that all these records are from the town dump. Tiny town with 15 houses, and we had actually stopped off there to kind of see how does this look or whatever, and there was legitimately someone like behind it, peeking from behind the curtain, staring at us. And I was like, I don't think we're going to do this, man. We should just keep going.
There's another spot of Storai, and it's all in a cemetery. So you've got posed up on gravestones and stuff. Like,
where were we looking for? We looked for something. Was that in Utah or no? In Arizona, something down. Yeah, in Arizona on the first trip. There's some lizard that in the same way. Yeah, it's in the this tiny verging on a ghost town style town. And all the names in the cemetery are the same last name.
That's right.
Whatever. But there's some lizard that lives there, and you guys were okay, we're going for it. And I'm like, I don't know, man. I think tell me if you see one.
Oh, the leopard lizards out in Arizona. Yeah. Yeah, that's like the easiest place to find them. They're just like running between the gravestones and stuff. But
when we were out east, we went to a trip to North Carolina on the way back. I can't remember if it was North Carolina or Tennessee now, but there was all of these pins for eastern newts. I was like, yeah, that's a gimme. Like, I want to see an eastern newt before we go home. So we drive there, and what looks like a pond on iNaturalist it's like this woodland living community of all these trailers around this I don't know in-ground stock tank. And so we're walking up, and it's pretty weird. There's people just watching us eating their lunch, and we look down, and sure enough, there's just hundreds of eastern newts in there. It's like,
Yeah.
what do we do? Well, the guy with me is like, they're like, he's like, Net, get a photo and get out of here. So we just quickly like got them out there, snapped, and we ran. It's just, I don't know.
That's when you make friends with the locals. Hey, what you eating there? Do you care if I photograph your newts?
Squirrel. Interesting.
Yeah.
They're like, hey, what are you doing? And we're like looking at salamanders, like, and they just went back to eating and staring at us. We're like, all right.
Yeah. Well, that was that nice Western brown, as the guys were photographing it, and it was in this canyon where there were also people's houses, and so people were stopping and, hey, what you doing? Like, oh, just photographing a snake. And they're like, oh yeah, we got a Brettles in our backyard, you know.
What?
Yeah, we see it, you know, every once in a while, like it's out in the pool or something. So yeah, it's kind of cool. But they're like, oh well, don't get bit. All right, see ya. Like, yeah, kind of crazy. They're like, you're awesome. A few weeks late for this one. We usually see it, you know, earlier in the year or late in the year or something.
It's never when you're there, you know.
Right? Yeah.
It's never
if only you were here this time. Yeah, that's I don't know. I think too, like I was getting a little sick of hearing all the camera part names and all, you know, like the lens names and the different ranges and stuff. Like it was just like, okay, guys, yeah, okay, we get it. You're photo nerds. No. But yeah, that stuff just went right over my head. I had no clue what they were talking about. So it was like frustrating that I couldn't join in on a conversation because I like to talk too much or something. But yeah, it was like, and also the cost of things. I know like the new mirrorless cameras are at least a couple $1,000s for you know, a decent body with a full sensor and stuff like that. And it's pricey, you know, it's kind of hard to keep up sometimes. And then the lenses, you know, you want a really nice lens, and the glass really makes a difference. And so yeah, you're gonna shell out a lot of money. I know Jordan moved from, you know, kind of the typical DSLR to mirrorless, and he said it was really expensive. And for Jordan to say something's really expensive, that's like, whoa, it must be really expensive. Yeah. So yeah, I don't know that I can afford to make the jump now, but at the same time, like I think there's less expensive options that can still do, like you said, you know, yeah, you might get a little better quality or a little more fine tuning or whatever, like Nipper's Grand Canyon photos compared to yours. But is it really that much better? You know, is it $5,000-$10,000 better? Yeah, I don't know. You know,
yeah. I mean, I've been super happy with mine. You know, knock on wood, obviously. You know, to the extent it's done great for going on. Well, this will be 6 years. And honestly, so I started like you guys. You know, I hadn't bought a new camera in 15 years or whatever, and I brought something. I think Scott literally laughed when I pulled out what I had on the first trip. But Chris Salemi had gone with us, and he had, you know, more like closer to what Aspen or Jordan has in terms of, you know, there's all these different lenses and all this different stuff. But a big part of that became, well, so then Chris wasn't going back in 2019. And it was like, well, he had kind of filled that role. Two things I would say, right, is there's some idea of like sharing photos in the sense of, oh, well, Justin, you'll take the photos and I'll have gone on the trip and you'll send them to me and I can enjoy that, you know, but it's not the same as being able to, it's not your photo, you know, in the same way.
You don't feel as carefree about sharing it and things like that. Yeah.
Exactly right. It's just it's that extra level of complexity, you know, that can be a little off-putting. So it was like, okay, well, I'm going to try and find but what's the best thing that's both easy to use for someone who's not well versed in this stuff and has the capacity to take photos of something macro, you know, or not necessarily the macro in the sense of being massive, you know, a 1-inch lizard that looks, you know, as 7 inches, you know, on your screen or whatever. But you know, in terms of that range from that to something that's when we're talking monitors, right? So much of it is that, like, in that sense, Chris's photo of our spotted tree monitor from that first trip, I had found the lizard, but my camera, you couldn't even see it. So we needed Chris's picture with this, you know, crazy lens to be able to make it out and say, oh, this is the Corandiform, you know, spotted tree monitor or whatever. And so he wasn't coming. So it's like, well, what makes sense here that also, to your point about being portable and carrying it around and all this stuff. And it was like, well, I found this thing for, $1,500 or whatever that goes 24 to 600, and is not as good, in so many ways is not as good. But I've been I think it's where I want to be, in terms of the fanciest point and shoot camera you can buy, basically.
Right. And I think that's too something that's, again, to Dave's side, like learning all the tech that goes along with it, what f-stop you need, and how much light and all that kind of stuff. And I don't know, I tried to mess with that stuff, and my brother and dad tried to instruct me on it, and it just kind of went in one ear and out the other. And so at the end of the day, I was just like, okay, I'm spending all this money on a nice camera, and then I'm not taking
so
much
many
better pictures anyway. Yeah. And so I'm just turning it to auto and snapping. It's like, well, what's the difference between that and an iPhone? Not much if you're not really willing to learn and to develop the techniques. And then too, I found like you're saying a little bit, like you're kind of just copying somebody else's. I don't want to just take the same pictures as everybody else necessarily. You see all the cool shots with like the habitat, and then it's like fisheye with the snake there, and they're really cool. But then like everybody does the same thing, and it's like, well, then it just becomes the kind of mundane or whatever. Anyway,
right.
So, I don't know. And to your point about photo sharing, I've gone on a lot of trips where like, oh yeah, we'll share photos, and then you never really share photos. Like I think one trip we did is because we stayed in a hotel before we flew out the next morning, and we just got our memory cards and uploaded to our laptops or something, so we all had each other's photos and videos and things like that. So, but like you said, I'm not posting, Steve's photos or anything like that. Yeah. I just use my own from that trip, but he has some that are better and look cooler or something, or better lighting, or, better angle or whatever. So but I don't know. That said, I've got, thousands upon thousands of photos that I probably I've looked at maybe once or twice, and then, they just kind of sit in cyberspace or whatever. So that's the other side of, taking a lot of photos is,
well,
also need to
you're exactly
go
on
through
it.
them and delete them or whatever too.
Is you're saying, because I know we've done a ton of trips together, and it's like, oh, we haven't shared photos. And the answer is almost certainly because I take so many photos that then I ultimately don't process them in a realistic amount of time. Certainly not in the day or even weeks. Often I try and spend my winter going through them, but then if you're busy or what, it doesn't even happen. I have unprocessed photos from 3 or 4 years ago, because when you're taking it, when I'm barraging it, where it's like, okay, rather, because I don't know those peculiarities of the camera, it's like, okay, I'm just getting there through pure volume, where it's like, I'm gonna take 40 pictures of this one, from this thing, and then it's like an eye test, you're A/B testing all this stuff through 40.
better, worse.
Yeah, exactly. And much better. So I still have some from our trip when we first went to California. What was that, 22? Something like that. That it's still haven't gone through. Like, I've gone through them. I have the general range, but it's sort of, then it's like, okay, am I doing this one or the more recent thing or whatever? I guess maybe the I need to do those in season too, because there's some, maybe this is a topic for a future show, but there's so much pressure amongst the Herper bros at this point to not post things as you're finding them, which I understand. Right. I understand that side of it, saying like, especially in certain places where it's very clear then where that would be from, as it's kind of setting a little roadmap for the next person, or particularly in like, I just saw this today. You can come tomorrow and maybe you can see it as well, as opposed to if you're posting in December something from May or whatever. Right. Maybe I do need to be posting stuff from 2022 as I'm doing our trips this year.
Yeah. And that's frustrating too, because like a lot of times I'm looking for that intel, like watching people's YouTube videos and like, when was this filmed? Like, this is when I need to be in Australia or whatever.
Right.
Like, they're finding
not as in I need to follow what they did next week.
Yeah.
Like, hey, I'm just trying to get the context for this. Was this photo, did you take this in May or June, or is this from in that instance, March, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And I do like on Flickr where they have the date the photo was taken, so at least, they're not giving out the where it was taken, but they're
Right.
giving out the date it was taken. So you're like, okay, at least they're finding this species on this day of the year. And so I know where to find the species now. I just need to know which day to shoot for or whatever. I don't know what time frame, So yeah, it's kind of fun. Well, any other pressing photo related things? I think I do like the I guess power that it puts in your hand, the new tech, all the mirrorless stuff. Like you can get better photos in lower light and things like that. It's really kind of a cool thing. I do think it's neat when people are real photographers, but sometimes that can be a little hectic to be with the real. I mentioned my cousin who's a semi-professional photographer. My dad went on a trip with him and they were going to one of the national parks in Utah, and my cousin was setting up a shot. He'd researched it, wanted to get this shot, and at the right time of day, and the right lighting. So he sets up his camera and he's waiting, and they're there for hours to get one scene shot, scenery shot. And my dad turns around and he looks, and there's this just beautiful sunset, with all the rock formations and everything. He's like, oh my goodness. And so he's taking pictures and looking around. My cousin didn't, I think he might have glanced back and said, oh yeah, that's nice. And then he went back to just waiting for that perfect light to click the shutter, crazy. Yeah. I've been on a few trips and I just get way too impatient.
Yeah, I know for me, I think to go back to not to photo, I hate being bogged down by too much when I'm out herping. I know when I'm in the car, if I see something moving across the road, I want to be able to get out there as fast as possible and not have a giant pack.
Right.
But those, I don't know from personal experience, those cameras look heavy and they're pretty decent sized bags. I don't want to be swinging that thing haphazardly, but I want to get the snake really fast. So
right.
I don't know. I already struggle to get my hook, and then I've got a little mount that I can put my iPhone on and quickly grab both of those and bolt. But I don't know. I think less is more when it comes to being able to get out there and catch it, or when you've got a heated up collared lizard on a rock and it's not staying still. I want to be able to just corral it really quick and get a quick voucher shot and then give up on it, basically.
Right. Yeah. Why put the animal through? And I guess there could be some of that, where are we wearing out our welcome? Have we had our experience with this animal? Do we need to let it move on its way or whatever? Are we negatively impacting the animal by, we flipped it under a rock and now we're setting it in the sun or something like that. We should be aware of those kind of considerations too. And granted, it's probably less of an issue if you're out, in the middle of the night on a road or something, you're moving it off the road into safety and kind of taking some pictures after that. But, that could be a consideration as well. Following laws in different states or different countries, are you allowed to manipulate the animals or touch them at all? Or, West Texas, you're not technically supposed to road cruise, you're only supposed to hike them up on cuts or whatever on the side of the road. You're not supposed to stop your car and, get the snake off the road. You have to sit and wait for the snake to crawl off the road, technically, if you're following the law to the letter or whatever. So, granted, again, is anybody ever doing that, or they're just jumping out and moving the snake off the road? But I mean,
99 out of 100, you're probably fine. It's the 1 out of 100 that we hear about when that's actually a plastic snake, and there's a fish and wildlife guys,
waiting in the bushes with your ticket. Yeah. And it's not a cheap ticket. You could have bought a mirrorless camera with that ticket. So yeah, and I don't know. I've gone through kind of different tech, I'll buy a drone or something because I'm thinking, I'm going to use this drone, get some cool footage, aerial footage, or come down on a lizard or a snake or something. And then I do that and it's like, no, that's not what I thought it would be. So maybe the drones that they're using for those wildlife shows are not this drone or whatever. And so, then it kind of falls into obscurity and I don't use it very often. And I just wasted a couple $100 or whatever, so there's that too. If you're not using the tech correctly, you might as well stick to your iPhone, because it's just as good to get a picture versus no picture. Jordan did have kind of a cool harness that he could click his camera to, and he said it wasn't a burden, it wasn't weighing him, hanging down off his neck. Because that's the thing that I never liked, was if I had my big, DSLR, it was hanging around my neck. The big lens on it was, weighing it down, and it was uncomfortable. And then if I tried to climb or something, it's swinging around and hitting the lens on the rocks or things like that, just not the best. I wasn't as agile, and I couldn't get around and go grab that snake or catch that lizard or whatever, because I was worried about damaging my camera in that action or whatever. And I remember one time I was jumping out of a vehicle to go see there was a blotch blue tongue on the road, and so
I love that.
And and I jumped out of the car and knocked my camera out of the car, and it landed on the road. I'm like, so I just wasted $1,000. Luckily the camera was okay until I fried it in northern Australia a year later or whatever. So but that's that kind of thing, either damaging it from dropping or smashing it, or through heat damage, which turns out to be much worse in my case than the physical damage. So, or you just wasting money if you're not attentive, or you forget to take it out of the car or something like that. So yeah, that can be rough too, because I usually don't forget my phone. I don't leave my phone in the car, because we're so it's tied to our phones that you're not doing that. So and the camera you have with you is the best camera, right? And if you always have a camera in your pocket, you're kind of set.
It's a little bit easier, a little bit more likely.
Right.
I would say that I think the biggest pro for it, really, and you're not least to blame for this, is just the idea that, like, I don't know, even in this day, as we're moving away from printed books, I'm sure that's going to be even more difficult going forward, right? I don't know if you guys caught Craig Trumbauer was on Corn Stars on the Herp Network show with Chris Painshaw, and he was on there, and a couple folks. But anyway, he was talking about actually explicitly sort of the feasibility of printing books, because the best print houses are in China, and all this fiasco in terms of just affordability of doing it, the actual practicalities of it. But I would say that the idea that your friends might write book, heck, I even sent Craig a picture of my life for Florida pine snake, and I'm sure he didn't need it, won't use it, because he spent all that time for it. He's got plenty of those. But the idea that, like, my picture could be in a book, let alone many pictures, and then it turns into maybe we should do a book. You find all the venomous reptiles of the U.S., all the forms of reptiles of the U.S., and then that's your book, and entirely on, like, well, here's the pictures of, here you go, I've seen them, here's my photos of all of them,
and here's a story how I got that photo,
and here's the narrative of what that entailed, because maybe a thing that I know we've hit on before, but, and David, it fits into the box of saying maybe not sharing the photos, is so many times, especially in the social media context, the payback or the payoff of sharing those photos doesn't do justice to what it took to do that, either in terms of the planning on the front end, the what it took, the toil, or then, like, sort of the joy. All of it is diminished when I share what to me is objectively a beautiful photo of an animal that we went halfway around the world to see and worked really hard to find, and then you get 20 likes on it or something, and it's just this is actually diminishing you have to be in a proper Zen spot, or it could be really kind of do your head in of, like, really all of that, and that's 20 likes or whatever, as opposed to the wanker holding the Amy it's like, that's tens of thousands or whatever.
He just made tens of thousands of dollars off of that video or something, and it is kind of crazy. And I think too, I think with the advent of this camera gear, everybody can be, a semi-professional photographer.
It definitely has sort of leveled that field.
Reiterating
your point about, like, the amazing, when we're talking about Zig Lashinsky, Bob Zappalorti had mentioned when we were talking about you know, and he's talking about Zig and how he's literally did that as his career after he left the Staten Island Zoo, right? You
Right.
know, he's
Yeah.
represented from animals, and that's why you see in our old books, you know, going from I don't know what the mid '90s back, how it would be like you would see all these same that was part of what was so fascinating is
Yeah.
like how, you know, Zig Lashinsky and all this stuff. And it's because he literally had a firm that was out there marketing his photos and saying, like, okay, you're doing a field guide of reptiles to the US. Yeah, absolutely. We can put 75 of his photos into that book, you know, and
Right.
he's making his living doing that. That's amazing.
It's pretty cool. And it's really difficult these days to, you know,
Yeah,
you're trying to sell
I
prints
don't
or
even
something.
think it's really possible, you know, in
Right.
that same way, you know,
Mhm.
because it's the playing field is so level, which is good and bad, right?
Yeah. I guess if you're a really good herper and you're finding stuff that other people aren't, but then again, how many people are going to care about that photo, you know, enough
Right.
to pony up $80 and, you know, to print it out or whatever, you know, that's few and far between, you know, for sure. And most people are like, well, yeah, you can use my photos. That's fine. You know, it's
right. You've seen it with the books, even
yeah,
in the context, right, of saying compared to, you know, so for the Audubon Field Guide, where I'm talking about when we were
yeah.
talking with, you know, with Zig, where he's literally making his living based on them, including those photos in that book. I know you've run into all sorts of the politics.
Yeah. A bit of that for sure. Oh, did we
Right.
lose you?
Yeah.
Oh,
No,
okay. You're back. Yeah.
the
Yeah.
politics of you know, oh, can I use your photos or include my photos or what? Nowadays, it's the honor is on the person who took the photo that the photo is being included, as opposed to vice versa. Right.
Right.
And I think
Yeah.
that way. You know, I'm super. When you guys put out your Utah book, yeah, I'll be thrilled that however many photos there are, I'll be you know that many times thrilled about that it happens. But it's just a completely opposite mentality and mindset.
Yeah. Well, we're looking at the same problem of publishing that book. It's stuck, and I don't know, you know, when it's going to be able to move forward. I'm really bummed out about that. I talked to Zach Loafman, and he's out of copies of his book, and they were going to order another print run, and it was going to cost, I think, 4 times as much to print them now with these tariffs and everything. So, kind of a bummer. I hope things get resolved soon, and we can get back to.
Well, if anything, it's unstable, which means that it could change tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly. But, yeah, is the damage done, and is the who knows? But we won't get into that because my blood
get grim quickly. Yes.
Yeah. But yeah, I do think there's definitely a place for really good photographs, and I think it. Like we've seen here, it definitely depends on your personality. And, if you're ADD like me and Dave, like on to the next one, let's find another one, then maybe that's not necessarily for us. But if you're somebody patient like Rob, who can take, 1,000 photos of the same animal, then, getting that volume content to get just the right shot, then more power to you too. I think there's room for all sorts, and I do think it's a good thing to have those photogs on your trip. So you can maybe see those really nice photos, and it's your good friend that took it, and so he might not be opposed to sharing a photo or two, with you, and especially if you want to print something out or something like that. So, yeah,
absolutely.
And I guess we can all look back on our old photographs and be like, oh, those are terrible because the tech wasn't as good. And now the tech's good and it makes everything look good or something. But who knows, in another 30 years, we're going to be looking back on what we're doing now and being like, oh, that's terrible. I guess there's a style and, I guess tech kind of captures that time and place, but it's hard to imagine that it's going to get much better than it, is now.
Yeah.
And I was surprised to find out, oh, dang it. I don't know why I start a story without thinking of the name first, but he takes super fantastic photos. He's Australian. I could probably look him up real quick, but anyway, he Rob
Ross McGibbon.
No, not he's excellent as well, but this guy's like, they almost look
Rob Valentic.
Yeah. They almost look like super processed. Jordan told me he goes out with like suitcases of kit, and this is just lighting, and he's not editing them to look like this. This is
that's
lighting
wild.
and
that's truly wild.
It's incredible. And he's like, it's like next level photography skills, the stuff he's doing. So yeah, I just thought, oh man, he's really bumping up the saturation, but no, he's actually capturing the actual saturation of his subject. So I was happy to learn that he wasn't just like photoshopping the heck out of them. So kind of cool.
My eye twitches at the thought of how much patience it takes to do that.
Right.
Good on him. I mean, that is a talent to itself. I mean, corralling the snake and then putting all your equipment up. My goodness, like I can't imagine. But
yeah, he has a mobile photo studio basically that he sets up and just takes shots. And I really do enjoy like the new tech, and like I was watching the Americas, that program that's on. Just one of the major networks out there, but I was watching the one on the Andes, and they had the salt plain lizard footage. Oh my gosh, it was incredible, like how close up they can get on these little lizards, and the fights, and the crisp clear image of these two small lizards battling it out. Incredible, like just the footage they can get these days. So yeah, I'm glad that things like Planet Earth and have kind of utilized this new tech to just bring us some like that Galapagos footage of the racer chasing the little marine iguanas was the most incredible thing I've ever seen.
Most compelling thing.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. And just the quality and the composition and everything, and to be able to capture that, in the wild was just next level. So
and the fact that they can capture that really is giving truth to the character of those things that otherwise we would not recognize or know, or we would otherwise ignore. Right. I mean, I wasn't familiar with that whole drama
dynamic
as it unfolds. Right. So the ability for them to capture that and present it to us informed me that it even exists. Right. In the same way where we say, like, it's almost things are diminished by being common in the hobby, or, trivialized or whatever. And it's like, they're all amazing creatures, and it's because we're failing to see it. It's not that they aren't amazing. It's that we're failing to see it, either because we're inured to it by seeing it over and over, or, we're just not seeing what they actually do.
Right. Or we don't, I've never been to the Andes, or, like, and this is like some, salt plain, like high up in the mountains where, why would you go there? Exactly. I've never heard of the salt plain lizard that they were talking about, but granted, I Googled it first, as soon as they said the name. I'm like, get that up. There was a duck that they photographed up there too. Like apparently this river runs through this geothermal area, so the water heats up above 100 degrees Fahrenheit, and they're swimming through it, and they have these big old feet. They're just beautiful ducks, and their ducklings are like, they're trying to get these ducklings to navigate this raging river that's 120 degrees. Just insane stuff. Like, how did I not know this was a thing? Like, these are beautiful animals and doing some like just insane behaviors and in weird environments. There were 3 species of flamingo that were in this red caustic lake that nothing else lives in except their food, some microbe that they sift out of the water, and 3 species of flamingo, and they're doing like these little dances, and I'm like, this is just incredible. And they had like just super high definition up close footage of these things, and they're like sitting on the shore, a mile away, capturing this. It's incredible. And the drones, they're talking about developing new photography method or instrumentation to actually photograph them without disturbing them. So the drones are super high up, but they're zooming in on these wild dogs hunting as a pack that you couldn't do if you were trying to, follow them in a truck or whatever. Like you can get in a drone a mile up and get them. It's incredible. Yeah. So I am very appreciative of the new photography tools and the in the hands of a professional wildlife photographer. Next level. I could watch that program over and over and just geek out on the salt plain lizard, or the ducks or something. So awesome. Well, have we hit all our photography topics? I'm sure there's things we missed. If you heard something, you're like, hey, you didn't discuss this. hit us up. Come fight with us sometime. But yeah, we definitely appreciate you coming on, Dave, and talking with us and talking photography and your herping experiences. It's been really great catching up and hearing your stuff. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me on. I appreciate it. Sorry I didn't have a lot of photography thoughts. I was pretty blunt on mine. Just I'm impatient.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think maybe Rob should have battled you, because I think we're almost on the same wavelength there. But
That's
maybe
why I thought it'd be fun.
Yeah,
I'd be curious.
right.
That's why I was like, I want to hear what he has to say.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's
So,
good. Well,
I tried
maybe
to
we
jump
do
in
have
with what I
a
thought.
part
Yeah.
2 with Rob fighting instead.
Well, there you go.
No, I thought you did really well. I think that was most of it, right? Because it does come down to me to sort of personal taste and whether the end result is what you're looking for, right? Was the end result the experience of doing it, or is it that, but as much being able to try and remember it based on seeing your photos and things, and that beautiful, and is that fulfilled by, oh, there it was, or is it, this, I need the beautiful photo, or I'm going to just instead be looking at the photo saying, the scale's slightly out of the
Right.
venation, the eye is slightly out of focus. Oh my gosh, it's driving me crazy, or whatever. So again, personality types and things. So
right. It does bother me when I take like 30 photos of something and I think, oh, I look at it on my phone, I'm like, oh yeah, it looks good. And then I get it home and look at it on the screen, the computer or something. I'm like, they're all out of focus. Like they're all terrible, not terrible, because they still lead you to that experience. But it's like, shoot, I wish I would have tried higher, more lighting or something, Right. And I think if I were to get, another DSLR or mirrorless or whatever, a more professional camera, I would probably want to find something simple where I could have like one lens and the camera body and a flash, and then like know how to do the shot that gets, that I'm excited about every time, just kind of like do the same shot. Okay, if it's nocturnal, this is what I do. If it's during the day, here's what I do, that kind of thing, where it's like more simple, kind of my level, my skill level, rather than like I'm going to dial in the f-stop and figure out I got to meter the white balance or whatever. Like I just want to be able to like roll in, take some nice shots, and then be good. But maybe that's not possible. I don't know.
Right.
Yeah, maybe auto setting in the future will be so good that you won't even know anything. I can just be an idiot and push the button, and I do kind of like to compose a shot, like I think if you lay down you get a good angle, or that kind of stuff. But jump back into it. But where can people find you?
They can find me on Instagram at Kelley_herpetological. I think that's the best place to find me these days.
Yeah,
I don't post a lot on Facebook anymore, for no other reason than I'm lazy.
But it's such a positive place as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So if you want to see just photographs from an iPhone of captive and wild herps, Instagram's the place to find me.
Okay. Yeah. Well, there is a button you can click to just have it automatically go to Facebook too. So if you're lazy, you can just click that button once and post them both places at once.
I did find that recently, and that has made things easier.
Yeah. Because I do think that people see it on one place and not the other. So at least true. You can share that experience with your like-minded friends in both places. But cool.
It does seem like maybe people see your stuff on Facebook more than they do on Instagram. That's my own. Not that I basically don't post on Facebook at all at this point, but just that was my experience of it. I do think, and presumably it's all this sort of metered stuff based on if you're paying to sponsor things and whatever. So I think Facebook maybe is more lenient, or will show more people without engaging that sort of stuff.
I do think if you've like engaged with that person recently, you have a
shows
much
you
better
more.
chance
Yeah.
of seeing, because like there's friends that I probably haven't seen stuff from them for years, and I don't know
Yeah.
if they're just not posting or the algorithm's not giving it to me, that kind of thing. So
Sure.
Yeah.
kind of tricky. If you search for somebody, all of a sudden you're seeing their stuff all the time. Like I just
Yeah.
wondered what they were doing. I don't want to see all their stuff all the time. I just realized I disagree with them on everything they stand for. Cool. Well, we kind of, I don't know if I should even keep doing this, but I always kind of ask people if they've seen anything really cool in herpetology or herpetoculture lately that they just want to share at the end. I think I kind of got mine out of the way with the nature footage on the Americas. There's some really, really cool footage in that show, and I'm excited. They have a scene where a salamander's jumping off a log and kind of floating down. I'm like, okay, I got to watch that one too next. That's my next view. But the Americas, I just love wildlife and just watching that stuff. It's been really cool. So,
I think mine isn't so much visual as I read a paper recently about the Malpelo gallywasps, Diploglossys millipunctatus. And I learned that they live on this horrible little rock island with like nothing on it.
Yeah.
So they're eating crustaceans and
Whoa.
whatever other thing they can find there. But
Yeah.
the most interesting part of the paper to me was that the lizards have learned that the cries of the infant blue-footed boobies means that the mother or the father are coming to give them food. So the lizards will bum rush the approaching parent where they regurgitate fish.
Yeah.
And the lizards then grab the fish and scurry off into the rock crevices
No way.
and eat this little Yeah. I don't know. That is the most fascinating and strange thing I've ever heard.
Wow. Planet Earth, if you're listening, get that footage.
Yeah, that's right.
How cool would that be? That was the other thing with these salt plain lizards is they had footage of them feeding, and apparently, like, there's nothing but brine flies in these salt, so they're just like rushing the mass of brine flies with their tongue out, trying to grab one or something. It's so great. Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah. I still, that footage of the which species of lizard was that jumping on the lions, trying to catch flies on the lion's back on one of the planet Earths. The really colorful flat rock lizards. What are they called? Oh my gosh, that's failing me, but they're brightly colored and just
I know what I know what you're talking about. It was like everywhere for a while. That was one of the promo shots. Yeah.
Oh, Graves or something like that. Anyway, sorry. Yeah. All right. Any other stuff that's cool? Any cool podcasts or anything?
Well, that one with Craig that I mentioned,
was
really cool. And they went long. Craig tells great stories, and a lot of them were things that haven't been put out there before and things. So I think he went basically 3 hours, maybe past 3 hours, even of just really cool stuff. And such a great dude. So yeah, I think I would stick there.
That's cool. I listened to Ryan's episode and heard about his and Nick's trip out with Chris.
I have to listen to that one.
That one was pretty cool. It was kind of funny. I guess, I hear that and I go, bucket list. That sounds fantastic. Go see all these tree monitors and stuff. And the guys that were interviewing him were like, no way. If there's no AC in the hotel, then I'm not there. I'm like, oh my gosh. Like, come on, guys. Like, yeah, you got to be uncomfortable a little bit, but think about what you're gaining. You're seeing all this cool stuff. But yeah, they weren't into that at all.
They were not into it.
Pass. Okay. I think Bill Stiegel was like, hard pass. Like, I've done that. I'm too old for that crap. Oh man. I hope I never, get to that point where I don't want to go chase some wild herp, because it's too uncomfortable. But,
absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for coming on and being here. This was a lot of fun, and thank you guys for listening. And we'll thanks to Eric and Owen, and glad Eric's doing better. He was having a rough go at work there for a bit, so glad he's back in the saddle. And their interview too was fantastic with Ari and hearing about Good Enough Island, fun. And yeah, it was really neat. So thanks for having Ari come on and talk about that. That's another kind of like exciting like exploration. You know, how cool would that be to get out and do that kind of stuff. But so yeah, thanks guys. Keep up the good work, and thanks for housing our little podcast under your umbrella. But all right, we'll catch you again next time for Reptile Fight Club. See ya.